All right, everyone that is watching this, I have Danny here with me from Optimize My B&B. He is coming out with a new book. I'm honestly just so excited to be able to talk with you. I mean, we were just talking about how just genuinely looking forward to having a conversation with you about your new book that is coming out, and all the details about that. So, why don't you give a little bit of an introduction for anyone? There it is. Give a little bit of an introduction to anyone who's listening who maybe doesn't know you, which be pretty surprised if they didn't. But yeah, just give an introduction, man. We'll kind of get into it from there.
I'm sure a lot of people don't know who I am. I'm kind of a recluse in the industry. A lot of people go out and do these shows, go to conferences and whatnot. I've never done any of those. So it's a good chance that some of your audience doesn't know me. But
Yeah.
to have a brief introduction, I started at Airbnb, the company at headquarters in San Francisco, and I worked there for a period of 3 years. I worked in accounting mostly, and unbeknownst to me at the time, that would trigger my life to change. The first change was I ditched accounting and went to property management after Airbnb. That gave me a different perspective on the Airbnb short-term rental space. And then my life changed again when I started an online business. I was still in San Francisco.
Mm.
And then the life changed a fourth time when I started living in Airbnb because I left San Francisco. I sold my stuff. I became a minimalist, which I still am today,
Mm.
and started traveling the world. 7 years now, over 2,000 nights in Airbnb. And that gives me a perspective that no one else, I believe, on the planet has. Someone who worked at Airbnb
Yeah.
and who lives as a guest permanently in hotels and short-term rentals, predominantly short-term rentals.
And on top of that, you've managed listings, you've managed other people's listings, you've studied listings themselves, you studied the algorithm, you study the listings of like what does better than other ones. You're constantly A/B testing things, from my understanding, right? Like you're just constantly studying Airbnb and then taking all that information and deploying it for other people to use.
Yep, and I don't have anything to announce yet, but as you mentioned A/B, there may be a tool coming out this
Mm.
year.
Very interesting. Okay, well, we might touch on that a little bit later, if we want to. But for anyone who's watching this video, I want to tell a quick story before we kind of get into it, just so that they're sold on you, because I don't think people understand how important your information has been for a lot of Airbnb hosts that are out there. And so you are like you kind of said, you're kind of behind the scenes. I think that everyone pretty well knows you. I mean, you sold 50,000 copies of your last book, right? So a lot of people definitely know who you are. And your book saved my business. I tell everybody that. Your first book, Optimize Your B&B, this book right here, hands down saved my business. I've told you this multiple times, but I'm just going to tell anybody who's listening the story, right? So when I first got started with Airbnb, I got about I think I had 6 listings in total in Chicago, and I was heading into the down season. So I had opened them all up like during peak season. Then we were heading into the winter, and all of a sudden, all these really easy bookings that have been coming through the entire time just stopped. And I had no idea what was going on. I didn't know like how to fix it. I didn't know where to go. And I happened to buy your book and read through it. And I literally treated it like the Bible, or like an instruction book, or like a tool that I used within my business, because I can still remember myself sitting at this one kitchen table and going through step by step, because it's a step by step guide in your book, right? It's not really like a story. It's a step by step tutorial. And I did every single last thing that your book said to do for all 6 of my listings at that time. And then once I had done that, all of the bookings started coming back, right? So in other words, I had thought I knew what I was doing, but really I was just in peak season. And so I thought I was like putting together good listings. I thought I was doing a good job, and then everything started slowing down. And you write in this book saying that the slow season is where the true Airbnbers come out, or something along those lines. And you teaching me exactly how to be a good Airbnber and truly optimize my listing allowed for me to show up higher in the rankings, get the bookings that I needed to get through the winter, and be able to cover all my bills so I could stay in business. And that's why I always say that your $25 book saved my business and made me thousands of dollars. Now, the other thing that I probably never mentioned is like, this is what probably this your book started the journey of me truly learning how to optimize a listing, like deep dive a listing. What makes one better than the other? How do I beat my competition? And like I had multiple listings that were ranked #1 in Chicago for week after week after week, for month after month, right? And it was just simply because I was following a lot of the stuff that you taught in there, and I had them like on a weekly basis. I would do the same things you told me to do over and over again. So yeah, anyways, that's your first book, right? Like that's the one that everyone already has their hands on, and now you're getting into the next one, which I want this entire conversation to be all about.
Slow season separates the good from the great hosts.
There it is. Yep, I had a feeling you're going to say that quote. It's true though. It's 100% true. People who can't make it through the slow season just don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. So. And it's, you know, one of the I was writing the book like sales copy a couple days ago. Mm-hmm. And first of all, it's really hard. But yeah. One of the lines that I'm
ChatGPT.
I didn't. No, I didn't. I was just on ChatGPT today, and I said, like, who is Danny Rusteen, to see what they said. And they said something that is like somewhat correct. It thinks I own a company like Rusteen Digital, but it got that I was an author and like a digital entrepreneur, and so just somewhat correct.
People. Okay, that's good.
Yeah. And so I added a line in there, and the biggest problem nowadays is information overload. There's a lot of people out there, marketers, not Airbnb hosts, not real estate investors, but also them.
Yeah.
But the people that have the most following online, typically they're marketers. So just for your audience and for you, if you have, you know, honestly, I'll say it right now. If I were to have a YouTube and I got 500,000 followers, I have now 10,000.
Yeah.
I would now be a digital marketer for YouTube. Even though I'm representing myself as an expert on Airbnb, that would take priority. I would now be that first and Airbnb second. And so we have these influencers, these real estate agents, these hospitality experts, all these people, and even just, you know, individual hosts coming out and saying they're experts and posting on social media and this and that. Right. And so, and I'm not saying that that's necessarily bad. A lot of them have good advice. But if you're a host nowadays, you're like, well, who do I, but also some of them don't have great. So I'm not saying all of them are great either.
Yeah. I know what you're getting at.
Yeah. So if you're a host nowadays, you're like, how do I tell? How do I know who's the best, who to listen to? And so that's why I always come on podcasts and whatnot, and I say, you know, I call myself the best in the world. I do that because I want there to be, you know, who's calling themselves the best in the world. Well, just look into me, look into my perspective, look who I am, and decide for yourself. But I'm hoping that will get someone to be like, wait, who's saying that, and not like be defensive, like, oh my God, I can't believe he's saying that. But I'm sure that happens too.
Yeah, you know what? That's essentially what you're trying to say is that there are a ton of people who talk about Airbnb advice and they have huge followings, right? But just because they have these huge followings doesn't mean they actually are the true experts who know this stuff inside and out. And a lot of people are taking their advice when in reality they know like a portion of it. Whereas you yourself, you are truly the expert when it comes to so many different facets of the Airbnb space, because you've been in Airbnb, you've worked for Airbnb, you stay in every single Airbnb, and you've written multiple books on Airbnb. Is that correct, what you're trying to say?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so on top of that, and I can verify that because your blog on top of that is such proof of your knowledge of getting into the weeds of the different softwares and tools that exist to truly understand how to use them to their fullest capacity. Because your blog will take Price Labs as an example and break down every single last little thing about Price Labs that you need to know and how to use it. And then you'll write it in a step-by-step format so that somebody can just follow your recipe of how to use Price Labs, which is what I used to do back in the day as well. Like when I didn't know how to use a tool, I would see like, okay, what's Danny using? Oh, he's using Hospitable. All right, how does he use it? And then I would study what you did because you provide that information, and then I would go and use it. And I did that with Price Labs as well. And that's how I figured out how to use these software tools, because you're the expert, right? And
well, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I appreciate that. And my information is more detailed than anywhere else you're going to find. And I know that concretely 100%. With my last book, I read all the books. With this book, I also read various books. Some of them may have more reviews than me. Well, not some, one. And it is a good book. But after reading it, I realized, oh, it's a good book. It's for beginner hosts. It's general. It's a good book.
Right.
But in terms of detail, mine just blows it out of the water. Just blows it. There's no even comparison. And I don't mean to toot my own horn, but
No, toot your own horn. This is what this is meant for. People need to know the level of information that you're providing, right? Like they need to get it. So sorry.
And Price Labs, no, it's all right. And Price Labs is one of my recommended partners. So in all the different tools and whatnot, I started just before I wrote this book. Started writing in October. I kept it very silent.
Yeah.
And before that, I was starting to test more tools. My preferred pricing partner is Price Labs. I think they're the best. I use them exclusively.
They are. They're so good. Price Labs is so good. If you've used any of the other software tools and you've used Price Labs, you almost will always choose Price Labs. They're just on a different level with the way that their usability, their features, their functions. The guys at the Price Labs team guys and girls at the Price Labs team are just so good at building a tool that's very functional. And I think it's significantly cheaper than, Wheelhouse and some of the other softwares that are out there too. Not to kind of put them all down, but I'm on your side with that one.
Yeah, no, the other ones aren't bad, but
Right.
I prefer Price Labs, and we don't have to get into
to
that all so much. But that is, and you know what? A good time to. I don't know. We said the book. The name of the book is Profitable Properties.
Profitable Properties.
And one of the sections. It's a 400-page book, and that was cutting it down. I cut it down about 15% from when I wrote it initially, but it's meant to be like when I put it up, I was ranked number 1 on Amazon as business encyclopedia, and so that's kind of what it is, I suppose. It's like an encyclopedia.
Yeah.
It's got 8 sections. Section number 5 is pricing, and I tell you, I have two. Pricing is complicated or easily confusing for a lot of people. So I have. And I've never shared this, I don't think, or I have bits and pieces, but I have a strategy. It's a 2-step strategy to help you manage your pricing easily. And I say easily because once you understand my strategy, you look at numbers and adjust your pricing based on that. Or you look at a booking pattern and you adjust your customizations based on that. There's no like, what should I do? It's if X, then Y. That's how I kind of try and break it down.
Okay, so that was going to be my question is, did you write this book in a user, like a process, just like you wrote your last book, where it's like, this is step 1, this is step 2, this is step 3, and you're going to get the desired result? Is that generally how this book is written?
I did write it like that, but I took it, like in the last book, I was very detailed about platforms as they were at the moment. Gotcha. And so I would go into Price Labs and I would say, click this button and click that button and then click this button.
Right.
I'm not doing that with this book. This book is going to be usable for longer. So in this book, I say, optimize your Airbnb, the last one. That one is still relevant if Airbnb is a central part of your strategy. But in Profitable Property, in the beginning, I say, hey, what's the difference between the two? People are probably wondering that. And so the difference is optimize your Airbnb specific. I talk about strategies that only work on Airbnb, but also that was kind of to the detriment because some of those chapters, I think 6 or 7, and I call them out in Profitable Properties. If you go and buy that one and you haven't read it yet, these 8 chapters just skip. They're no longer relevant because I was too detailed and too specific.
Okay.
So in exchange, what I'm doing is I am creating a course along with the book. And so in that course is where I'm going to get specific. We're going to do weekly calls, and I have a discount code, 50% discount code for your viewers. We can.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about that. So that's awesome.
Viewer, you have to stick around till the end. We'll probably just look at notes. Nice. So in there, I'm going to be getting detailed about that stuff, answering detailed questions, creating modules based on those questions, keeping it updated. That's where I'll spend a lot of my time. And another cool feature of the program or the course is I'll be looking. A big question is, where do I buy? Where do I buy? And how do I evaluate the market?
Right.
And so you helped me with that on the Belmonte Penthouse. Which is my Airbnb in Colombia. You're quite knowledgeable about that, I know. In part 2, it's vacation rental market analysis, and I go through my process, partly of which included your help, of identifying not only Colombia, but Medellin, but 4-bedroom luxury penthouse in this specific micro neighborhood, which I talk about, and I don't heard that, I haven't heard that phrase used anywhere else, but micro neighborhood is like, it's what it sounds like, but it's more important than anything else, really. And
Yep.
I give an example in there about somebody who's also in the same neighborhood as me. They have a 5-bedroom and it's a luxury place. It has a hot tub. It's very similar to mine.
Right.
They have a view. I don't have a view. But what's the difference? The difference is the micro neighborhood. And he's making 1/3 of what I'm making.
Okay, so you're saying that now you're getting into my world, right? Where it becomes to like siphoning through the data and understanding it and figuring out exactly where to go. So now my mind's kind of rushing on that. Now, how close is his listing to your listing? And would a guest who's not familiar with the area know the difference between the two just by looking at the Airbnb listing?
Just by looking at the Airbnb listing?
Yeah. So one thing that I always think about is what's the process that the guest is going to be using? What's the user experience of the guest as they're booking on Airbnb, which is something that you taught in your first book, which I now always think about. So in other words, somebody who's going to book an Airbnb in the town I can't say it, Medellin.
Yeah.
They will. So they're going to book a home there, and they're going to see all these different 4-bedroom penthouses, and then they're going to see yours and his. And can they tell a difference between the two because of the micro neighborhood? That's what you're saying, right? You're saying the micro neighborhood is what's making the difference because you're in the better neighborhood. But is the guest able to tell that just by when they're going to book the Airbnb and the way they're looking at the map on Airbnb?
They would be able to tell that via the map.
Okay.
Because our locations are different. So let me explain.
Yeah.
When you're going to this country for the first time, which is most of my guests, which is most of his guests, you hear about Parque Giras, which is another difficult name. I know. I have phonetically spelled it out in the book because I use it as an example.
Okay.
Parque Giras. That's what you hear about.
Yep.
So you want to be close to that, but not too close, because too close is too noisy.
Okay.
So I am close enough. I'm in a sub neighborhood, micro neighborhood called Provenza.
Okay.
But Parque Giras is where people know. So I'm a 5-minute walk, 5, 7, maybe 10 minutes, I don't know, walk there. Very walkable.
Yep.
And flat as well. He is a 15-minute ride.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
But on top of that,
yeah,
if you can go outside my front door and go to a coffee shop, go to a restaurant. For him, you have to call an Uber to get anything, even a coffee. So he's in a more of a residential neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so there's another thing where I go through also in my new book, very detailed, the guest process, because I realized, okay, no one else has this. No one is booking Airbnbs. No one knows this better than me. So I have a chapter dedicated to, what does the guest go through? So the book isn't Airbnb only, but this I call out when, hey, this I'm talking just about Airbnb. This chapter is I'm just talking about Airbnb. You can assume it's pretty similar for other OTAs like Booking and VRBO.
Yeah.
But I take through the 3 pages of Airbnb before you can book and what optimizations are possible for you. And so on P2, which is with the map, Airbnb doesn't allow you to zoom out and zoom in any rate you want. They have fixed rates.
Correct.
They have fixed zooms.
Yep.
There's 9 zooms in total. And so when you're next to Parque Giras, if you look at the map, his place is at a location that in my estimation, someone is zoomed out too much. They're going to see him. They're probably going to be, I need to go in. Then they go in more to I think it's the 4th zoom.
Yeah.
And
man, this is why you're the expert. The fact that you know how many zooms there are on Airbnb and that you are determining the location based off of if going through the user's experience, knowing that the Airbnb is going to show them a certain part of the city, but not all of the city, and that it's going to, in a sense, favor the location that you're specifically looking into is a way to know where's the best place to be when you're getting an Airbnb. Right? Is that what you're saying? Right?
Yep, exactly. Yeah. In part 8, I say the top 13 factors, ranking factors in order. One of them is map location. Where are you on the actual map? Airbnb wants to make money, so they're highlighting the locations that make them the most money for people who otherwise don't know what they're talking about. I talk about also about, the difference between Airbnb and Google, where it's dynamic versus static, respectively. And dynamic search works better when you don't know what you want. You're not familiar with what you actually want to buy, which is what the guests are not. That's we're describing Airbnb there. There's a bunch of Airbnbs. They don't exactly know what they want. If you're going.
Can you define what you mean by static and dynamic, and sort of explain the difference between Google and Airbnb when it comes to the algorithms?
Dynamic means that the search rankings of different listings change based on the searcher's behavior and their past history. Now, if they don't have any past history, Airbnb still has data about them.
Okay.
Google, on the other hand, if you, wherever you are in the world, I'm in Colombia, anyone else, someone in Thailand, Russia, wherever, types in optimize my Airbnb, we're going to see the same results. That's static search.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So so what was I saying?
Yeah, sorry, I cut you off there right as you were going in. So that was
the map location is one of the 13 ranking factors. I forget. But anyways, the other thing is that as you go out further in this specific case, because it's such a main area, Parque Lleras, you're going to get budget travelers as well, in addition to missing out. So there's a few things that factor into it.
So you, in a sense, what you're talking about is in your part 2 vacation rental market analysis section, you're actually using the Airbnb map and what they show as a way to determine what's the best part of the city to be in. Am I following that? And then on top of that, sort of what's walkable, what's within the budget, like these different little factors, what people's budget would be based off of the distance to the walkable, most desirable locations, different things along those lines. Is that accurate?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like one small aspect that you should do. Go to Airbnb. They can change this, of course. So it's just one small aspect. Don't rely on it. But go to Airbnb, go to your city and see what areas are they highlighting, or is it more diverse, or disperse? And also, you can move your pin on Airbnb wherever you want. Now, if you move it too far, it's gonna be bad probably. But in his case, he should actually move it closer to Parque Lleras, 5 minutes closer, where the guest's probably not going to tell the difference, but he'll result in more searches.
Oh, you're talking about, okay, so what you're saying is when you're putting your listing up and Airbnb is asking for your address and it's saying, do you want to show your exact address, or do you kind of want to move your location to show not your exact address? Then you're saying he should, in his Airbnb listing, kind of show it a little bit closer so that he shows up in the original search results for that city.
Not exactly. You're referring to general or specific location on Airbnb map. General, they paint a blue circle, or they put a much smaller blue circle around you. But in the middle of that blue circle is where your pin is on the map. And when you're creating your listing, at this time you can choose where to put that pin. You can type your address, whatever, and you can pin your pin anywhere on the map.
Oh, okay. I did not realize that. That can be a little deceiving, but
yeah, it can. Yeah, it can. And it's been deceiving for me as well. I booked various times where the map, I thought it was 5 minutes from the beach and it was 15 minutes. That's a big deal. That's an extra 10 minutes both ways, and I'm going a couple times a day.
Yeah, I mean that's a really big deal, right? Do you find that? So, in my opinion, if someone were to do that, I get the logic of you want to show up in the search results better, right? Or like show up in the map area. But I would probably, for my own listing, make sure that people knew exactly where I was. So in the case of like, instead of being 5 minutes to the beach or 15 minutes to the beach, I would write that in the Airbnb listing. I'd probably add that to one of the messages or like before they book, so that they know, like, hey, just so you know, I am 15 minutes from the beach. Like that's the distance. And then in the sort of welcome book as well, I'd also mention that for a third time, so that they weren't thrown off when they showed up. And I think, and the reason I mentioned that is because that's what I used to have to do, because I had a train beside my house in Chicago. And so people had to know that that was the reality of what they're getting themselves into, even though I didn't have any real photos of it. and they were
Yeah.
okay with it if they knew it was happening. So in other words, you can what I'm trying to say is you can show up in the map, right, and get that advantage of being seen, which is what you want, but you can also still tell them the truth so that they're not annoyed when they show up and they're 15 minutes away from the beach instead of 5 like they thought. That's my thought. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the beach is like Parque Giras. So if I'm expecting to be 5 minute walk from Parque Giras and I'm 15 minutes and uphill, that's
Right.
different. But if you're a 10-minute drive or a 15-minute drive, that's a little bit different. People
100%.
in this country are going to be all confused about addresses anyways. So in my estimation, of course, you test it and see. But in my estimation, if you were to move the pin in to get more searches, and it's actually, you can say in your listing 15-minute ride, you could still
Right.
say that, but
Right.
your pin is actually closer, showing that it would be 10 minutes. Airbnb used to show this distance, but they don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
I think in this case, it's okay. It would be okay.
I fully agree with that. I don't think there's much of a difference between 10 minutes to 20 minutes when it comes to driving distance to the main location that people want to go to. So if it makes sense to move your pin just a little bit to be able to show up in the results, I would be morally okay with that. Let's put it that way. As long as the guests
Yeah.
knew what was coming their way. In your part 2, the vacation rental market analysis, do you talk about any of the Airbnb data softwares and how to use them to find the market?
Yes, I do. I talk about so there's a few ways that you can go about. There's two ways that you could go about doing this. One way is going in person and getting familiar with the neighborhood and the subtleties of the micro neighborhoods. That's my preferred way to do it, actually going. I also recognize that some people don't want to do that, or they just simply don't have time to do that.
Yeah.
And so the other way to do it is just with raw data. And
Okay.
so you can that would be the second way to do it. Yeah.
Do you want to, being that this is my whole channel is all about Airbnb data, do you want to share a little bit about how you might go about doing that with the raw data? Or do you want them to save it till they read the book? Because I'm waiting till I get my copy so that I can read through this section because I'm very curious.
Well, honestly, even in the book, this, as you know, this is pretty detailed. Like, you need charts and numbers and graphs to be able to see this.
Yep.
So it doesn't really. I'm not trying to like leave a cliffhanger, but like it wouldn't. I'll probably lose people because I don't think I'm good at explaining verbally this part rather than writing it out.
I
It's
see.
not tremendously complicated, but there's various steps to it, and it revolves around numbers and identifying kind of those average numbers to see what's above and what's below, and if what zip code those average numbers in, or what neighborhood, depending on how the tool is using them. So I don't know if it's podcast friendly.
That's fair to say. I mean, I totally get that. It's obviously outrageously complicated as it continues to go. So, what made you decide to write this book? You'd already had the last book, and you did say, I know you had mentioned that it was specific to Airbnb, and this one's not going to be specific, but to write a 400-page book takes a lot, right? So, what was your motivation behind putting it together?
Yeah, I'll have to go after this, or maybe another question. I've got the other podcast started 6 minutes ago,
Okay, sounds good.
so you
That's
can
all right.
you can you can you can edit that out, I hope.
That's all right. No worries. Um,
I wrote this book because you know what? I was never planning on writing another book. It was a lot of work. It did pay off well, and that was great in various regards. But in October, I realized that the landscape has changed so much, and the main thing that changed about the landscape was, nowadays the competition has increased. There's still a lot of money to be made, but in the past you would Airbnb what you had. I Airbnb the couch in my living room, your in-law unit, your extra home, vacation home. Now people are going out specifically and looking for vacation rental markets, suitable vacation rental homes. And so those are more professional type hosts. And so we need to go from the first step, which is vacation rental market analysis. And that's how the book is laid out. That's part one is introduction, foundational concepts for new Airbnb hosts. Part two is finding profitable properties and markets, etc. And then also running your Airbnb, your rental, like a business. You have to do that nowadays. What that means is a lot of things, but when you go to sell, people are selling their homes as short-term rentals. When you go to do that, if you have a list of email addresses of prior guests, a website with 500, 1,000 monthly views, and an Instagram with a few more thousand people, that has real world tangible value that someone's going to pay for. You're now a business. So we're running on Airbnb more like a business, and that has a few things, including I briefly touched on direct booking, which is a hot topic today, and I think into the future as well. That's why that is part 6.
I saw that there. The easy way is the way you wrote it. The book direct bookings the easy way. What do you mean by
I just updated that. That's a work in progress.
Nice.
You know what? I was debating on whether putting like the easy way, because a lot of people look at direct booking and they're like, well, I have to create a website and I have to do this and I have to do that. And it's a lot of work, and it can be a lot of work.
Right.
So by the easy way, I mean like, well, what are the bare minimums you have to do to actually get direct bookings? And that was the other thing I was going to do, like, how to actually get direct bookings. So a lot of people, there's a lot of services that put up nice looking websites, including free on pre-MS services.
Right.
But how do you actually get bookings in a way that doesn't require you to be on forums and responding on Facebook? Well, I have a way, and I'm still testing out some ways, but I document, a dozen different ways. Hey, in your community, here's the groups and resources you should go to most easily get direct bookings, rather than, trying to become an Instagrammable Airbnb. That's tremendously difficult and probably not worth it. Instead of trying to go the SEO route and targeting certain keywords, that's tremendously difficult, and you should probably not do that. What should you do is you should use your local network and start there. And I describe more about what that actually is and how you can find your local network, but it's easier than you think.
So love that. I think one of
Wait. I have a real life example. Like days ago, this just happened.
Okay.
And by the way, first of all, part 6, direct bookings, I talk about the reasons for and the reasons against. I start with the reasons against and for. So I don't want you doing direct booking if it's not right for you. And I'm very transparent about this. I'm going to tell you who it's right for and who it's not right for. And so just days ago, I got a booking, last minute booking. I had a Tuesday open. Tuesday's not very popular. It was an Airbnb blocked it. They said, hey, this is a high risk, we're blocking it. I was like, all right, well, I've judged this as not high risk, so I'd like to respond. They said, well, no, you can't respond. We've already made the decision on your behalf. So luckily, the guest got in touch with me on my direct booking website, and I got the booking.
Nice.
If I hadn't, that was $400 or $350, whatever. If I hadn't had somewhat of an online presence, so I will say that most hosts should have somewhat of an online presence, even if that's an Instagram with 12 photos, 1 photo a month.
Yep.
But I got that booking because I had an online presence, and so there's various reasons why direct booking, to some extent, for most hosts, makes sense.
That logically makes sense, to be able to do that. And I know you got another podcast that you got to run to, but what I wanted to talk about is, one last thing I guess I want to talk about is I look at the data all day, every day, and I'm constantly reviewing properties to figure out, how can we maximize the revenue? What's the absolute best place to be? What should we buy? What should we not buy? All these different things. And when I'm doing that, I'm reviewing the properties in order of who's making the most to who's making the least. And I'm always doing it by, location and bedroom count. So I'll go into a really large market and I'll look at one specific micro market and I'll study all of the 4 bedrooms within that area. And the thing that happens is I always see people who have these amazing listings that are done really well with great photos and the right amenities and good design and a great title and all of that, right? And then they're always making more money than everybody else. And then as I get further down the list, these listings have, they'll be making less money, but the home is significantly nicer. And it's a more luxurious home, but they took worse photos and they added a worse title, or they didn't add the certain amenities.
And so in other words, their home has so much potential to make tens of thousands of dollars more, but they don't know what to do, or they don't realize that they're losing so much money. And like, I've made a YouTube video where within the first minute I prove that a photo shoot can make you $25,000 more if you take the photo shoot properly. And the reason I'm going on this rant is because your work that you've put together makes people a crazy amount of money, and it allows them to take what they have and figure out how to maximize the revenue from their specific listing to make thousands of dollars more than they didn't realize they could have, right, in the first place. And so, you know, if it, like I always say, your book has been one of the best investments I've ever made, your first book. So I can only imagine what your next book is going to be, right? Because, you know, by the book costs, you know, $28 or $16. I think that's American. Yeah, I'm Canadian, so I was making sure I was on the right site. But it's not expensive at all, but it makes you thousands and thousands of dollars because you know how to put together a proper listing. And I think that's the most important thing that I want people to understand. I probably should have said this at the very beginning of this, but anyways, that was my little rant on why I think your book and what you're doing and everything is so important, because it helps people make a lot of money, right? Which is super helpful for them to stay in business and continue to grow their business and continue to have the things in life that they want to have. You got to make the money first to be able to have all that, right? So anyways, just wanted to mention that and kind of go a little rant. Before we finish up, anything you want to mention that is important before you hop over to that next podcast?
I appreciate your kind words, and a lot of people who bought as an indie author, you know, I don't have a publisher behind me. I don't have their proofreaders. I don't have their marketing department. This was all me, and I was over my head in a lot of these aspects. You know, like for example, finding and vetting a proofreader. I don't have that skill. I did the best I could. But it took a lot of time, and you know, there's a lot of reasons why I wrote this book, and so I hope it gives people tremendous value. But I also know that on Amazon, like a 0.5% review the book. As an indie author, a review is like tremendously important. We know that as Airbnb hosts on Amazon, it's probably even more important. So if you do read it and you get value, I would encourage you, wherever you bought it, please go and leave a review. You can write something, which is preferable, or you could just leave a star review. Either one works great and really does help me out tremendously.
That's a great to hear. And I think, you know, fully agree. I'll definitely review it after I go through it. I'm once again still waiting for it to come in the mail. So like I'm really looking forward to that when I get it. I will definitely be reviewing it myself once I actually have it and putting out more information about it, because like I said, man, you made me a ton of money and you kept me in business. So I owe you big time. And where can people find you? Where can they follow you? Where can they learn about you? All those different sites. Can you let people know?
Yeah, if you type in just optimize my Airbnb, you'll find my website, my Instagram. On my website, you'll see the free blog posts. The YouTube is at the same name. There's free videos on there as well. On Instagram, I'm most active, and I'll sometimes do impromptu, or quite often do impromptu videos. Those are the three places to start. Like I said, I'll extend a 50% discount to your audience, and for the first 3 months of that program, I'll be doing weekly live video calls.
Nice, awesome. Appreciate you, man. Super looking forward to it, and thanks for coming on today.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.